Okay, good evening, everyone. Okay, welcome to our May meeting, and I hope everyone had a wonderful Mother's Day, celebrating with family yesterday. Okay, so for now, can everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Please take a seat. All right, so the first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes of April 16th, 2024 board meeting. Can I have a motion, please? Ms. Abramson, seconded by Dr. Park. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, right. Okay, and now we are going to have our budget hearing, and we will invite Dr. Rufo, our Associate Superintendent for Business Services, to present the last budget hearing before the budget vote.
Sorry about that. Okay, welcome to our budget hearing, which is our fourth presentation for the 24-25 school year. As we've been mentioning from the beginning of the budget cycle, this has been a challenging budget year as a result of inflationary pressures, increases in health insurance, and mandated contributions to pension systems, as well as the challenges of a late state budget, all added additional pressure this year. And in regards to the late state aid, you'll note that an item on the agenda is the revised property tax report card, which we revised slightly as a result of the additional state aid that we received. So despite all of the challenges we had this year, we're pleased to have a budget that meets our overarching goal of preserving our existing programs and services for students, and also allows us to do some needed facilities work while remaining under the tax cap. So we wanted to review on a high level what's included in this year's budget. Also wanted to mention, before I get into that the additional item or pressure that we've been feeling is enrollment growth. And while many districts in Nassau County have been experiencing the inflationary pressures and the rise in health insurance, they were a bit of an anomaly with just a few other districts experiencing enrollment increases. And as you can see from that chart, over the last 9 years or so, we've had an increase of about 12% in enrollment. So moving on to, at a very high level, what's included in the budget. At the elementary level, we're pleased to have UPK seats for all students that wanted them this year and next year. And we will continue in 24-25 with our comprehensive UPK progress monitoring, and that helps us enhance the UPK to K transition. We have upgraded our early literacy for K2 units of study, and those help us build upon and integrate phonics instruction. We added a full-time social worker in every building in this school year, and we're pleased that next year's budget enables us to continue that, along with the continuation of our district-wide partnership with Northwell Health. We plan to continue our No Place for Hate assemblies to nurture a culture of belonging within each of our school buildings. We plan to continue professional development on culturally responsible work in special ed. This includes in grades 3 to 5, our workshops focused on using literature to nurture tolerance, and in grades K-2, working on embedding culturally responsive texts in our classrooms. At the middle school level, we're going to continue science curriculum upgrades, promoting real-world phenomena and aligning the curriculum with the New York State learning standards as well as state assessments. We're continuing with RISE, which provides our special education students with access to a program that has emphasis on functional academics and pre-vocational experiences. We plan to continue our comprehensive student workshops and professional development focused on symbols of hate and anti-bias. Our libraries are being modernized, and currently HBT is under renovation, and Southwoods was modernized and as of September of this year. At the high school, we offer 31 AP classes. This year we had a new offering of pre-calculus, and next year we're going to offer Chinese. We have new electives. This year, in our college level anatomy and physiology class, students can learn about dissection virtually. In our Intro to Artificial Intelligence class, students learn to program drones that can respond to obstacles using AI. We have new elective offerings in 24-25, including college sports management, multivariable calculus, Chinese 5, and college foundations of manufacturing, where students learn about materials processing at every step of the manufacturing and production process, and we have an intro to health professions. Our high school library was recently named Library of the Year by the American Association of School Librarians. In arts, as you can see and shown on the impressive list of accomplishments on this slide, the district's sustained investment in arts and music education have helped to support our talented students achieve excellence and perform at the highest levels in arts, music, and the performing arts. In this school year, our district was named Best Community for Music Education for the 23rd year. Our athletics program is also highly successful, and our talented student athletes continue to excel, as shown with all of the county championships. And of course, we're very proud that all 23 fall and winter sports teams earned New York State Scholar Athlete distinctions. Our budget also supports the continuation of all of our clubs, which includes over 75 clubs in the high school alone. Our teams continue to succeed in regional and state level, and on the right you can see the teams that are qualifying for national competitions. In addition to supporting our academic programs, the budget also continues our efforts to maintain and improve and upgrade our facilities. The transfer to capital line in the budget contains capital projects including district-wide roofing, masonry, electrical work, and paving and flooring projects throughout the district. Upgrades to the electrical service distribution at the high school and HBT are also included, as well as classroom renovations in Southwoods. The budget also provides for the relocation of several offices to lease space to enable the construction of the classrooms at Southwoods. So the proposed budget for the 24-25 school year is $285,744,550. The budget is a 4.09% increase over the current year and carries a tax levy increase of 3.16%, which is about $145,000 under the tax cap of 3.23. Since the inception of the tax cap, the district has had levies that have been under the cap by a cumulative amount of $11.1 million. This slide shows the state-required three-part budget format. You can see that the program section accounts for over 3/4 of the budget, followed by the capital portion, which includes custodial maintenance, security, and debt service, with the remainder of about 9.5% for administrative costs at the district and building level. When we take a look at what accounts for the increase in the budget, we can see that about $6.3 million, or 55% of the increase, is related to health insurance and the state-required contributions to pension plans that we talked about at the beginning. Staffing and contractual adjustments is the next largest component of the increase, followed by increase in athletics and co-curricular and security. Our revenue supports our expenditure plan, and we can see that the tax levy is the largest component, followed by state aid of about 12%. We increased our allocation of both restricted reserves and unallocated reserves. And we did that on the restricted side to match the increase in expenditures for those line items. And on the appropriated fund balance, that increase is a result of us having additional revenue in interest income, partially as a result of a more favorable interest environment for our investments, in addition to our investment with NICLAS, which occurred. The board allowed us to invest with their cooperative investment, and we had favorable interest earnings as a result of that. Additional and more detailed information that I've been going through since February is available on the website. Some of it is contained in the budget brochure, and we will be sending out the required budget notice tomorrow. And all of that information and previous presentations are available on the district website. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ruffo, for the comprehensive presentation. Are there any questions from the board members for Dr. Ruffo? Mr. Greco.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ruffo. I know this year was not an easy year, and this was not an easy budget to put together, and I appreciate that. And my questions are not really directed at you, they're directed at Dr. Rogers. So I was wondering if you could give us, very general, Dr. Rogers, an ETA on 3 of the items that are in here under facilities that'll be paid for through the budget. The electrical upgrades, I think we all know how important that is. The HBT library, if there's a sort of an ETA on when that'll be completed. And the classroom expansion that'll involve us relocating some staff off-site.
All right, the ETA answers are not going to be entirely easy to give because we are awaiting State Education Department building permits, and there's a long lead time on those. So with the HBT library, that's the easiest of the 3. The library demolition has already taken place, and we're in the process now of doing the rehabilitation. We're hoping to be back in that library, I believe, mid-year next year. The classroom expansion here at Southwoods, we will vacate the classes, the current office space in the summertime frame, and have that space available to be renovated during the summer, but there are some aspects of it that may need a building permit. We're working right now to see if the renovations are light enough that they don't require a building permit. They were originally classroom spaces, so they'll be returned to classroom spaces. And then for the electrical project, I'll need a little assistance with that because that is a much larger project. So I'm looking for Mr. Hamilton and not seeing him right away. Can I hold that question until I find Mr. Hamilton, who will have a better time frame for me on that? Oh, here he comes. Mr. Hamilton, while you were out of the room, I was asked a question on the ETA for the electrical upgrades at HBT.
Good evening. So H2M is presently working on the documents to be submitted to SED as soon as the budget passes, so those will go up. The project has about a 26-week lead time at the State Education Department before we get a permit. And then after that, the project will be bid, and the project has very long lead times on the electrical components. So it's going to be a little bit of time, which is why we intentionally took it out of the bond project and put it into the transfer to capital to try and get a head start. So, I guess with all of that, I would say easily a year. Okay.
Are there any more questions? Okay, all right. Thank you, Dr. Rufo. So no one has signed up to speak at the audience to the public for the budget hearing, so we will move on to the next agenda item, which is the Treasurer's Report and Appropriations Adjustments. And it's going back to Dr. Rufo.
Okay, as shown on the Treasurer's Report, the cash on hand for the month end March 2024 is $77,170,991.19. It shows that bank balances for all cash accounts were reconciled to the book balances and were collateralized in accordance with the district's banking agreements and investment policy.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Rufo. Can I have a motion to approve Dr. Rufo's Treasurer's Report? Mr. Greco, seconded by Ms. Levitan. Are there any questions for Dr. Rufo? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. And 6B is the appropriation adjustments. Can I have a motion, please? Dr. Park, seconded by Ms. Koshia. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. And next item on the agenda will be the 10-year presentation. Okay, all right, here's the big moment. Okay. Anna Aston, John Austin, Daniela Bigolivo, Daniela Biganja, Nicole Cafiero, Laura Clark, Danielle Garrison, Megan Herbold, Lou Zhang, Lauren Kierson, Ari Lee, Dominique Lepresti, Haley Levitt, Stephanie Luna, Michelle McGovern, Zachary Mushashio, Carol Reese-Lee, Kyle Small, Krista Spano, Jessica Turnquist, Leanne Vitello, Dr. Andy Yen, Tracy Zangari, Matthew Zito. And for administrators, Dr. Teresa Curry, Christian Harrigan, Matt Lowe, and last but not least, Paul Lorraine. congratulations to our outstanding tenured teachers for their exceptional dedication and invaluable contributions to our students' success. Your commitment to excellence truly sets a standard for us all. Thank you. The first full week in May is also the National Teacher Appreciation Week. I'd like to take the moment to say thank you to all the teachers for their time and dedication to educate our children. Thank you, all the teachers. All right, so can I have a motion? Okay, Dr. Park, sorry, I can only count you once. And Ms. Koshia, are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Congratulations again.
Now, before you all leave, I take great pride in your success as well, and I offer some thoughts on your appointment to tenure. I've heard it said that friends are the family you choose for yourself. I know that's certainly been true in my own life, but I think the analogy holds for tenure as well. So this is a choice that we made, a choice to make you part of our family. And as a part of our family, you're going to be here for a long time. And that's a good thing, because what you've shown over the course of the last 3 or 4 years is that you belong as a part of this family. This is a place with high expectations. You've met them. This is a place that cares deeply about children. You do too. This is a place where people are professional and they care about their craft, and so do you. This is a place where people strive to become better, and you've shown us that all of you strive to become better. Because of that, you are the best people that we can place in classrooms and in buildings with the students that we care most about. So I congratulate you, and I look forward to hearing about all of your amazing successes in the future to come. Now, give yourselves one last round of applause, and this is your opportunity to make a graceful exit while you're applauding.
Such a happy moment. I could have this every day, but really, really happy for all our teachers. Come on. Okay, all right. So while all the teachers are making their graceful exit, we are going to move on to our next agenda item. And Dr. Rufo will give us the report on the April 17th, 2024 Citizens Advisory Committee for Finance meeting. Dr. Rufo, all yours again.
Okay, the Finance Committee met on April 17th, 2004. The committee discussed the highlights of the 24-25 budget. We discussed revenue and specifically the changes in aid that were proposed by the governor, as well as potential changes to the foundation aid funding for subsequent years. The committee discussed issues related to security spending, both in Syosset and other districts, and different structures that could account for variances in spending. The committee briefly discussed interest income and the committee's role in choosing NICLAS, the NICLAS Investment Cooperative, as a way to increase interest income. We also discussed how the surplus income enabled the district to lower the levy by appropriating some of the excess revenue to support the 24-25 budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rufo. And moving on to Dr. Rogers' superintendent's report.
Thank you. I'm going to spend a few minutes sharing the public feedback that we got to the draft proposal that the board put out for public comment and feedback. I'm going to ask our partners from H2M, our architecture and engineering firm, to join me at the podium so that we can share the load of going through this presentation. Part of what we heard in the responses from the public were simply questions about how the construction process works. This is obviously an ambitious construction proposal. We have quite a few buildings. Our 10 buildings have over 1 million square feet under management, so it is quite an extensive amount of property to keep up. And so what we'll do is we'll weave in some responses to questions that appeared in the public feedback as part of our presentation, but we, the administration, are going to prepare something for the public in a written form that responds to a lot of the questions that we've heard so far. So, great. So just a little history lesson. Where are we now? We started a discussion back in the fall of this year. We presented a draft proposal to the board in November. The board made amendments and changes to that after a lot of discussion and questioning. We put that draft proposal out to the public, did presentations on it in December, and held an online thought exchange survey so that community members could provide feedback to us. One advantage of that format is that there's an AI tool that will go through the responses and categorize them and find if there are patterns, so I'll talk a little bit about that later. We've also had a lot of community feedback just directly via email, and folks have shown up at board meetings to share their perspectives with the board. We had over 1,000 responses to the survey, about 400 from the high school, another almost 400 from the middle school, and the remainder were split among the elementary schools. Not surprisingly, the themes are the same themes that the board has been talking about. The need for repairs to the buildings because as they age, things require maintenance, how those cost estimates are arrived at, the challenges that we're experiencing because of our rapidly growing enrollment and the need for classroom space to accommodate the new students who are here, the challenges and the constraints on our athletics and physical education programs because of some limited space, particularly at the high school. And then there were, of course, a number of one-off concerns that were raised by folks. So one thing to spend a little bit of time going through in a little bit more detail is how the project list was arrived at and how the cost estimates are calculated. So in a moment, I'm going to ask H2M to go through that, but really the response to the first two bullets here are the work that our architecture and engineering firm do for us. So we are required by law every year to conduct annual visual inspections of all of our buildings to make sure that there are no glaring insufficiencies that could put staff or students in danger. And part of the job of those AVIs is to find building systems that are nearing the end of their useful life and need to be replaced before they become a hazard or a threat. And so that process identifies where the updates are needed, and the priority is driven by the systems that we believe have the shortest remaining lifespan. So I'm going to ask H2M to just talk about how that AVI process is handled and how you identify the items that make the list of necessary repairs to the school.
So we work closely with the district to create a priority list, and from the priority list we created in June, the board tasked us with going down and prioritizing the items in the prioritization categories, which was improving safety, infrastructure, ADA upgrades, and nearing the end of useful life. So as part of the AVI and the building condition surveys, we evaluate each one of the buildings and look for these items to be improved upon. So when walking those buildings, we came up with a list of what we felt was the priority at each one of the buildings.
And I'm sorry, I should have introduced both of you. We have Megan Bellato and Kevin Medler, who are architects with the firm and who help us do this work. I also want to just go through one question that came up with surprising frequency in the survey was around why repointing is necessary and what happens if Is it merely a cosmetic improvement to the building? What happens if we don't address the repointing when it needs to be done?
So over time, mortar begins to deteriorate, which then could allow water into the building cavity of the walls. You want to do maintenance throughout the district because of the extent of the brick throughout the district and the age of the buildings. This allows the buildings to extend their end useful life, making sure we maintain them properly.
Right. And then one common theme that was throughout many of the comments was a misperception that the work has already been bid or that the pricing has been fixed. And we'll need to correct that misperception so folks understand how the process works. But where we're at right now is the cost estimating stage, and we won't have pricing until we do bidding and we see what the market will provide in terms of the cost of the project as we have multiple contractors bidding on the project. But if you could just spend some time talking about how you arrive at cost estimates and how you benchmark us against other work that's currently going on in the marketplace, it would be helpful.
Sure. So we work closely with the construction manager to develop a cost estimate, and they have a very extensive knowledge of experience within the industry. So with the district, we develop a preliminary scope. As Dr. Rogers says, at this point, there has been no bidding, and it's all preliminary based on the visual inspections.
So what will happen from a process perspective is once the project is approved by the public, then the drawings will go to the state education department. We'll wait for them to give us a building permit. Once we're given a building permit, then we are at liberty to bid the project, and then we'll see which contractors bid on it, what pricing we get. Obviously, we have the option of rejecting bids if we feel like the pricing is too high, or we may decide to redesign the project in order to try and achieve some cost savings and value engineering in the project if that becomes necessary. But the pricing won't be set. What we're dealing with are estimates, and our estimates include the presumption that we won't be able to start for at least a year, so there's a year's worth of inflation built into those cost estimates. And I think it's worth lingering one more point about costs. School districts, unlike a private business, have to comply with a number of state laws. In the school construction arena, two laws tend to be most impactful in terms of cost. The first is that school districts are subject to something called the WICS law, which means for any project that costs more than $1.5 million, we have to have multiple prime contractors. So that means we can't have a single general contractor who might have an electrical contractor and an HVAC contractor and a general construction person working for them. We have to have multiple primes working the job. That tends to add complexity and cost to the projects. The second thing that constrains school districts is that we must pay prevailing wage. So what that does is it means that school districts are paying the prevailing wage, but private industries are often able to negotiate wages that are below the prevailing wage. So it's difficult to try and compare public entities that are doing construction to private entities that are doing construction because the cost basis is different. So we're compared to other school districts primarily, but also other public entities like local governments would be facing the same constraints that we are. We got asked a lot of questions about classroom space, which is understandable because we are experiencing, as Dr. Rufo illustrated earlier, significant enrollment growth. One question that came up was whether we would be able to do cosmetic renovations to classrooms, and as we went through our prioritization earlier, we were focused on accommodating the enrollment growth that we absolutely have to accommodate, and we were focused on fixing things that are going to likely no longer work properly in the not too distant future. Those were our priorities. Certainly, the board asked us to hit a number that kept the costs of the project under control, and so it wasn't possible to do everything within that number, but there will certainly be, every building will certainly see major improvements just not every single classroom we won't be able to fix every single classroom. We did get asked about more rooms. We're dealing with the balance of building as much space as we can justify with the enrollment projections that we have. So the State Education Department, as part of its permitting process, will also look to make sure that we're not overbuilding space. We certainly don't want to underbuild space either, especially considering the enrollment growth that we've been experiencing. And that, I think, answers several of the sample comments that we heard. And again, back to the limitations on how much work we could do, there's not a lot of investment set aside for administrative spaces, whether that's for teachers or for administrators. In fact, what we're doing is relocating administrative space off campus in order to make more room for classroom space, just because of the site constraints that we have right now. We did hear a lot of comments on athletics and physical education. I'd say at the top of that list, we proposed a track at H.B. Thompson so that the track opportunities were comparable for the students at both middle schools. A lot of residents asked why we wouldn't put a turf field inside the oval, as long as we're going to be doing all of the site work there at the time. It seemed to make sense to do it all at once. We got questions about the gym space at the high school. Some of our previous presentations to the board, we've talked about how we benchmark relative to peer districts and what the limitations are on the space here. We can certainly make that information more available publicly. Questions about AC in the gym space. The board, in its draft proposal, suggested that that was something that would be put in a second proposition for the public to consider. And we heard a lot of feedback about a permanent wrestling room being added, although we have the size constraints, the space constraints of our existing physical plant. And then we got a lot of questions about how often the high school pool is used. And the answer is, during the school year, the pool basically gets going around 6:30 in the morning and doesn't stop until 9:30 at night. So early in the morning, the divers are in there practicing, so they can do their diving when no one's doing lap swimming. Then during the day, we have water safety instructor, lifeguarding, swimming classes. The pool is full all day. Then at the end of the day, we have practices for our teams, both high school varsity teams and the middle school teams, followed by adult education, learn to swim programs, the Stingray program, and more. In the summer, it's the same thing, but just a little bit of a different time frame. Pool gets started first thing in the morning and runs until the middle of the afternoon, again with adult education, learn to swim, and programs for young children. So the pool is in constant use, and one of the challenges that creates is that there's never any opportunity of a fairly substantial amount of time to do serious work on the pool, because the time it takes to drain it and refill it and then do the work itself. There aren't a lot of periods during the school year where the pool is out of use long enough for us to take it out of service for any appreciable amount of time. Again, back to costs and taxes. Obviously, there will be an impact to taxes from the cost. We estimated those costs as part of the draft proposal. So when we do our follow-up to the community with responding to some of these concerns, we'll make sure that that's addressed. One thing I wanted our architects to address is the construction logistics. So we got a lot of comments asking the question, since this is going to occur simultaneous with the school year, these projects will take a lot of time to build. How do we operate school and do construction at the same time? What is the industry, how does the industry keep the building safe for students and staff while that construction is going on? And how does the industry avoid having that construction noise be disruptive to the learning process? So I thought it'd be great to take a couple of seconds and go through that.
So part of our bid package, we're going to include a construction implementation plan, which is going to identify the restrictions to the work. So identifying when there would be opportunities to, when they can't do noisy work, when they could do that, and make sure we're limiting disturbances and ensuring safety to the occupants of the building. The construction manager is on site at all times, managing that site, making sure that there are no disruptions to the learning environment, and making sure that everyone is safe.
And can you describe some of the things that they will do in order to keep the site safe while it's under construction?
Sure. So the entire work area will be fenced off and protected, and that will be monitored, making sure that no one coming into the site is only a contractor and has the appropriate requirements to enter the site, such as OSHA training. We would also ensure that when any work is being done, the CM is on site monitoring that work and making sure that the area is protected.
And what kinds of accommodations do you make for bathroom facilities, et cetera, so that workers don't need to access the building while students are in it?
Part of their contract is to provide their own facility, so they won't be intermixing with any of the students or staff during the day. That will be set to after-hour work.
Great, thank you for that. And as I mentioned, the survey tool that we use has an AI component to it, and what the AI does is it tries to identify groups of people who had similar comments or questions, and then see if there are commonalities between groups of people where there are overlaps. So they call it side A, side B, but the AI tool identified some concerns about costs, some concerns about improving the facility, but one thing that was common to both groups of people was wanting more transparency, more detailed information. So we certainly come out of this knowing that we have some communication work to do, which is good because I would want the public to understand what needs to be done to the buildings that their children are in, and how we plan to keep their children safe while we're doing that work, and how the costs are estimated, and how we're going to try and hold the costs down as much as we possibly can. The AI also, with the, again, the same side A, side B, but found common ground in both groups, illustrating the need for facility improvements. And I think that's kind of where to land this presentation, which is notwithstanding different pools of concerns, there seemed to be universal agreement on the need for facility improvements. So we need to update our aging facilities, we have to expand to accommodate our growth, and there's an opportunity to continually refine the buildings and the properties to make them as accommodating to our young people as we possibly can. Obviously, we want them to have the best possible experience here in Syosset that they can. So the folks from H2M and myself, Mr. Hamilton, Dr. Rufo, happy to address any questions from the board.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation. Are there any questions from the board? Okay, Mr. Ostrich.
Thank you. I noted with interest that almost all of the presentation was about the survey that we did in January. Is that roughly the time frame, or January, February? A few just follow-up questions. Has there been any other sort of follow-up information that has come in, maybe from the building level, from administrators and staff at the building, from folks that have contributed post the survey, and if people still want to contribute, what's the best way for them to contribute their feedback now?
I think the best way would be, obviously you can email myself, email the board. We can probably create a facilities feedback at SyossetSchools.org email address, and that might be the simplest thing to do of all. So we certainly want to hear any other feedback that folks have.
Right, and I just wanted to follow up on the other points about, from the building and from the buildings and from subsequent to the survey, if stuff has come in, if it's worth summarizing.
So the building leadership was involved early in the process, and all of the projects at every one of the buildings have been discussed thoroughly with the building leadership, and they were part of the conversations around the prioritization of the work that was done. So every building would love to have more work than what we've got scheduled, but what we tried to do was use the criteria that we talked about earlier. go back through it again. So the criteria were improving safety, infrastructure that might deteriorate if it's not addressed, ADA upgrades so that we're compliant in the places where we're not, and any building system that was nearing the end of its useful life. So that was the lens that we used in all of the buildings. Obviously, if there are more resources, our buildings show their age, and they show that the district made a lot of investments in its educational program, and now the opportunity to make investments in the capital program, is present. So at this point, we've put together a draft proposal for the board. We've heard this feedback from the community, and at some point we'll have to finalize what that project list is, but nothing has come up that has identified from the administrative level that has identified itself as a priority that we somehow overlooked.
Mr. Greco.
So obviously this is taking a long time. We started talking about this in October, and tonight we're not having a discussion on it, but I want your thoughts on timing here. When do you think the earliest we can get to a vote? And in my opinion, that's when that date is also the latest we can get to a vote. I understand we got 1,000 responses. That's much better than the last time, we solicited feedback. So if you could give us your thoughts on timeline so we can start to organize the next discussion on this and finalizing a plan.
Well, I don't want to speculate on how quickly the board will come to a conclusion on what the final proposal will be, but I'll tell you what the environmental considerations are that you should be aware of. So it is very typical for school districts to do these types of votes early in December. So that is not uncommon. Actually, I would say that is probably a very frequent time period when these votes are done. That doesn't mean that you can't do a vote sooner, but we have been hearing informally that it may be difficult to secure voting machines the later it gets into the fall because of the likely to be contested presidential election. And so it may not be possible to have access to machines as the fall goes on. So I think your two windows might be very early in the school year, September, if we're able to access machines, or December after the presidential election is over, and presumably that's resolved and the machines become available again. So I think those are likely your two windows, and we will certainly stay close to the folks at the Board of Elections to make sure that there are machines to be rented.
Okay, thank you. So I would urge the community to continue to reach out, either Dr. Rogers or the board, or if that new email address is going to be created. Any concerns about the facilities, that we are still continuing to gather information and feedback, and the board will, in the near future, have a discussion and incorporate as much of the community feedback as possible into our discussion. Okay. Thank you. Ms. Abramson?
I'm really concerned about the timing and how long things are taking. I think the administrator feedback on whatever we had planned to begin with should be brought up again, because speaking with administrators, I'm sure there are more since there's been more discussions. But if we're gonna aim for September, how do we backtrack and make that happen? So if that's the goal, whether or not it's feasible with the machines, if we get to a place where everything is done and finalized so that the goal is September, how do we backtrack from there? Because I don't want to lose any more time at this point. I feel like these are really important projects, a lot of them, and that we need to not lose the momentum.
So I think the answer to that would be for me to work with the board leadership to identify a schedule for moving through some of the conversations that the board needs to have around finalizing the board's priority list. And then once that priority list is finalized, we would want to do one more round of public information about it to educate the public on what the final proposal is before that. So I think you'd want to start that process before this school year ends and continue it through the summer.
Sorry, one more thing. So you don't have you want a final priority list from us after another discussion. Is that my understanding correct?
Yeah, I think there are some unresolved questions. You've gotten as well feedback from the public about additional scope that the public would like considered. So we'll need some direction from the board on how much of that scope you want to consider and how you want to structure the vote, whether that's one proposition, two propositions, et cetera, and then what scope belongs in which proposition. So we would share some thoughts with you on some ideas that we think might work, but ultimately that decision is going to rest with the board.
Okay. Last thing is, this was a very good discussion, answering a lot of questions, and I hope that people that aren't present will watch, but can we make a document available with some of the answers?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, that's already in progress. We've got something that is almost finalized. We wanted to present to you, the board, first, and then we'll make that document public second. All right, I think that's going to conclude the facilities presentation, so I'll give our friends from H2M the rest of the night off. Thank you so much for being here and for your help. So I know the board is going to have a discussion about two items in a moment. I just wanted to provide a little bit of overview information to inform the board's discussion, although I know the board is well informed on both of these items to begin with. So over a year ago, the state of New York authorized the creation of a school stop arm camera program. This is a program that will record take a photograph of any car that is passing a stopped school bus where the stop arm is extended and the bus is either taking on or letting off passengers. So the program results in a ticket for the driver, and in order to have the program work, three entities have to sign a contract. The town has to sign a contract, the school district has to sign a contract, I'm sorry, four entities, the bus company has to sign a contract, and the entity that runs the stop arm program has to sign a contract. The town of Oyster Bay waited longer than the other towns in Nassau County for the issue about whether the program was legal as it was currently constructed to be resolved. So in this year's state budget, which was just adopted a couple of weeks ago, the legislature resolved the question that was at issue, and now there is no question that the stop arm camera program is legal and can be implemented. So the town has already made arrangements with several school districts, and our current contractor, Huntington Coach, does have the stop arm camera equipment already installed on their buses. It's just not operational in Syosset because we're not party to the program at this point. So proponents regard this as a safety measure for students, and it's not without controversy, but in order to move forward with that, the board would have to decide that you want to pursue it, and in which case we would pursue all of the necessary approvals. The second is a proposal that was in the state budget, but was not in the final budget that was adopted, but does still exist in Albany as a standalone piece of legislation. So this is a proposal to create a separate permitting process for affordable faith-based housing. So what this would do is it would allow an entity that is a faith-based entity that owns property to develop that property as residential property without having to follow the same kinds of density guidelines and building codes that other residential or multifamily properties would have to follow. And it's even possible that the faith-based entity, after it gets the properties constructed, would be able to sell those properties off. So obviously the worry would be that these would create potentially dense housing environments on what is currently land that is owned by religious entities. And from the school district's perspective, leaving aside any comment about affordable housing itself, not our purview, but we would certainly have to accommodate whatever enrollment would come from a denser kind of housing structure. So it certainly, obviously it was something that was, that didn't have enough support to remain in the state budget. And right now there has not been a lot of movement on this proposal in Albany, but because it made it as far as being at least temporarily incorporated into one of the budget proposals, I know the board wanted to have a conversation about it, and I just wanted to set some context for the public so the public knew what it was we were talking about. And then before you move on, I have a handful of items to share. One is, I'm sure the board saw and the public saw a Newsday article about cafeteria inspections. I just want to reassure the public, the board, that every year we ask for the county to inspect us twice, as is required. And we're fortunate if we do get one of the inspections. We're certainly not holding them out. We would welcome them. They can only make us better and make our cafeterias safer. So I did want to assure you that we're still attentive to it, even if we're not getting external inspections. It's a priority to us. And I just wanted to pass a compliment along to Dr. Jeanette Wojcik, one of our administrators here. She worked tirelessly on creating a grant proposal for the Universal Pre-K program. I'm very pleased to announce that the state funded it. It is very difficult for school districts with our demographic profile to secure state grant funding, but she secured a grant in the amount of $910,000. So that's quite an accomplishment. We're proud of her and appreciative of all the work that she did for that. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rogers. And in terms of the faith-based, the stop camera legislation, what do you see in terms of the implementation, the timeline for the town and for the 4 entities that are involved?
So I'm going to ask Dr. Rufo, who works most closely with our transportation provider and has been in conversation with the town of Oyster Bay, what she thinks the timeline would be. Let's assume that the resolution is adopted by the board this evening, just so that we can have kind of a realistic sense of what the next steps would be from here should the board act.
If the board were to opt into the program, we just have to wait for our attorneys to wrap up just a couple of small things they're working on with Bus Patrol, which is the company, the other party to the agreement, and then they would pick up the agreements and then sign them and bring them to the town of Oyster Bay. My understanding is that they don't have to wait for approval, that they, for their board to meet, and that they could execute them. That would need to be confirmed.
So do you think that they would be up and running by, say, June 1st?
In my conversation with the Bus Patrol representative, they thought that they could be, yes.
I know we're going to be discussing this, but to the extent you can share reasons why we would not opt in, I think it's pretty obvious. The reason we would opt in would be student safety, but I'm trying to figure out why we would not.
Like many, I read Newsday, sometimes read the letters to the editor. There has been some frustration with the program, I think by people who feel like they were unfairly ticketed for passing the school bus. So some of that ire may be directed at the school board. That would be the most likely disappointment that you might hear from folks.
But to reaffirm, there's no cost to us. The bus and the buses are already equipped with.
Correct. The buses already have the cameras. There's no cost to the school district. There's also no revenue to the school district. So we have no incentive to try to be aggressive with enforcement. We're kind of out of it altogether. It is, because there are buses transporting our kids, we have to be party to the agreement, but we don't benefit from it in any way other than the safety of our children.
Again, we'll be discussing the faith-based housing issue as well, but my question for you is, do you know if Nassau-Suffolk School Boards Association or even NYSBA has taken a position on this and what their position is?
I do not know. I do know that in the jurisdictions where it is available, it seems to be adopted by nearly all of the school districts. I'm sorry, I thought we were still talking about bus stop arms. I believe that the state associations will oppose the faith-based housing initiative, if they haven't already. I think they've informally opposed it. I don't know if they have formal opposition memos out.
Are there any more questions for Dr. Rogers before we move on? Dr. Park?
So who's making the money from the fines? Is it the town or the people who's running the program?
Yeah, I believe that the proceeds from the fines are shared between the company that runs the program and the town. Dr. Rufo, is there any other party?
Huntington is not going to increase their premium because they have additional equipment on their cars and it's got to be maintained and
I don't believe that this changes the terms of our contract with Huntington Coach in any way.
Okay, are there any more questions? Okay, thank you, Dr. Rogers. Okay, so we are going to move on to the next agenda item, which is the legislative items, and that's the discussions on the faith-based housing. So Dr. Rogers, based on your presentation and all the information you provided to the board, would it be possible that you could draft a letter to State Ed on behalf of the board opposing such proposal? You know, and I don't know if anyone wants to chime in to for this item, for this proposal, just to you know, have Dr. Rogers draft a letter to send on behalf of the board. And of course, are we all good? Okay, Dr. Park.
do you know how many acres in our school district that may be affected by this?
Off the top of my head, no. No for a total. We do know that there was a property recently purchased off of Woodbury Road and Frolic Farms Road that's in the neighborhood, I think, 20 acres. There is Our Lady of Mercy Academy. We don't know what its future purposes will be. My guess is that that property is somewhere close to the size of our high school property as well. There may be other properties in the district that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head that are substantial, but those two kind of immediately come to mind because they've been in the news of late.
And this does not affect, even though Geico building is in commercial zone, it doesn't matter, they can still build on that property?
Yeah, as I understand the legislation, I'm just going to read that it allows religious institutions to have an as-of-right development of affordable housing, and it says that it would require to allow construction and occupation of residential buildings anything that's owned by a place of worship. So my read of the bill is that it would override local zoning, local building codes, et cetera, density codes, those kinds of things.
Mr. Ostrick?
And Dr. Rogers, from your reading of the proposed legislation, was there any mechanism for us in the case that religious institutions could generate new housing, that we have any mechanism to ask for any kind of remuneration from them? Sometimes we'll talk to developers to get remuneration, but in this case, it doesn't really seem like they're incentivized to do that because codes are overridden at the state level.
No, if anything, it appears kind of to go in the other direction. For example, there's Q&A and it says, what if a village, town, or city denies a building permit to one of these? It says that the religious institution can then initiate an Article 78 civil lawsuit, and they'll be awarded, not only will they win, they'll also be awarded all attorney's fees. So it does not look like there is a mechanism by which local governments could ask for some sort of payment in lieu of taxes to offset the potential cost of whatever governmental services, in our case, education, might be occasioned by this new housing development.
Two things. I just wanted to confirm that I think you've mentioned it, but if this does go through, it overrides any town, like when they were building by Amazon and other things, and the town could come and do a hearing about the issues. There'll be none of that if this takes effect. It's just at the discretion of whoever owns, whatever faith-based place owns that land, correct?
Yes, again, back to the Q&A, it says, building department must, within 60 days of receiving an application under this bill, ministerially, and without discretionary review, so ministerially in our world means rubber stamp, approve a building permit regardless of any provision of any local law, ordinance, resolution, or regulation, including study of environmental impact.
That includes when Geico was bought, there was some sort of stipulation about the Friends of the Land being something that would generate some sort of tax, wasn't there? If I was not correct.
I don't think it was a stipulation. I think it was the community of the Jehovah's Witnesses had put out a lot of information about what they intend to do with the property, and their intention from the start has been to subdivide the property and to sell the part that they're not going to keep and use as something that would generate property taxes for the school district. So that has been their plan all along, but I don't think that it was something that they were compelled to do. I think that has been their proposal.
So they could build an apartment building if they wanted to? Is there any restrictions at all on what they could build, or they could come in and build an apartment building and the town would have zero recourse in managing any of it?
Right. So the only constraint that I can see is that residential buildings can be constructed up to 35 feet tall, that's 3 stories, and a density of 30 residential units per acre in villages, towns, or cities with less than 50,000 occupants, so that would, of course, include Syosset. Residential buildings up to 55 feet in villages, towns, or cities with 50,000 or more people, but that's not us. So we would be maximum height of 35 feet.
Sorry, it was 35 feet, and how much per?
30 residential units per acre.
Okay, so are we all good having Dr. Rogers draft the letter? Okay, great. All right, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so the next discussion item is the school bus star arm camera legislation. The board's goal has always been, and I'm only speaking for myself, of course, and I've said that multiple times publicly that it's our student safety, student and staff safety. And in this case, I'm hoping that by deploying this program with our school district, and they'll help mitigate further incidents on the road, especially during rush hours in the morning, in the afternoon, and we have the train track, and it's, this is just going to be, in my opinion, it's, I'm all for it, for the stop arm. And I don't know if any other board members want to chime in to, okay, Ms. Abramson?
I literally watched a car today in my neighborhood pass a bus and actually speed up because they may not know the rule or whatever it is, but the bus had a honk and there were 2 little kids. So I am all for trying to keep the kids safe, because if those 2 little kids stepped out because they thought it was safe, that would have been a very big accident. So let's try to do something to stop it.
Great, thank you so much. And then so, Mr. Astrick, I'm sorry, I didn't.
So I would like to voice that I'd like to support this, and in addition, I'd love for us to communicate to the public that it's going into effect, and to reiterate our commitment to not having people blow past buses with little kids getting off it. I mean, no brainer doesn't even cover it.
Great, thank you so much. And so, Dr. Rogers, there's a resolution prepared already, so we will do that. And then in the meantime, if it's going to take effect within a month, I think lots and lots of communication to the community is going to be essential, not just to the learning community, but to the broader community in Syosset. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, all right. So there's no unfinished business, and we are going to go to our new business. A items. A1 is the approval of the appointment of staff changes. Can I have a motion, please? Ms. Koshia, second by Ms. Abramson. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? I just want to take a moment to to thank Ray Laverso for his years of service as
Thank you very much. It's been a privilege to serve. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. And A2 is the appointment of Assistant Principal for Student Management. Can I have a motion, please? Mr. Greco, seconded by Ms. Falco. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? A3 is the appointment of Assistant Principal for Science and Technology. Can I have a motion, please? Dr. Park, seconded by Ms. Koshia. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? A4 is the appointment of Assistant Principal for Mathematics and Business. Can I have a motion, please? Mr. Greco, second by Ms. Levitan. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so I would like to I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Dan Kim, Arina Kimagarov, and also Megan Perito for joining our Big Syosset family, and we look forward to your valuable contributions. Thank you.
And I will just join Ms. Chang in welcoming you to this family. You heard my remarks to the teachers and administrators who received tenure this evening. We do not take these decisions lightly. We are always looking to build our team, build our strength, serve our students well. You've impressed all of us through the process. We're looking forward to great success with you in these roles. And as the board knows, but probably worth lingering on this point for the public's benefit, we made some restructuring of how we support the curriculum side of the work here. We've had K-12 coordinators for certain subject areas. We're moving to teams now that will do that coordination so that we can have additional specialization and expertise at the elementary, middle, and secondary levels. So these assistant principals are going to be the subject matter experts at the secondary level for the subject areas that they were appointed for. They will work with a team of assistant principals and administrators at the elementary and middle level so that we have a really robust means of building and supporting the curriculum work at Syosset for years to come. So this is the next step in the evolution of how we do that support, and I think we've got the right people to help us make great strides in that. So again, my congratulations as well, and we expect you at work tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. Just kidding, we'll see you in the fall.
Okay, congratulations again. And if you would like to make a graceful exit, this will be the moment to do so. Okay. And A5 is the approval of a stipulation of agreement with the Syosset Teachers Association for the Syosset Registered Nurses Unit. Can I have a motion, please? Mr. Greco, seconded by Ms. Falco. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? B items. B1 and B2 can be taken together. They're the approval of the Committee on Special Education and the Committee on Preschool Special Education recommendations. Can I have a motion, please? Dr. Park, seconded by Ms. Koshia. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? B3 is the school reading and adoption of new policies 9120, workplace violence prevention, and 9550, expression of breast milk in the workplace. Can I have a motion, please? Mr. Greco, seconded by Ms. Levitan. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. C items. C1 is the authorization for special education and/or nursing contracts. Can I have a motion, please? Dr. Park, seconded by Ms. Koshia. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C2 is the approval of health and welfare. Can I have a motion, please? Mr. Greco, seconded by Ms. Falco. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C3 is the authorization of service contracts. Can I have a motion, please? Dr. Park, seconded by Ms. Koshia. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C4 is the authorization to participate in the school bus Star Arm program, subject to the council's negotiation of an agreement. Can I have a motion, please? Mr. Greco, seconded by Ms. Falco. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C5 is the approval of revised school property tax report card for the 2024-2025 school year. Can I have a motion, please? Dr. Park, seconded by Ms. Koshia. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C6 is the authorization for piggybacking with the City of New Rochelle. Can I have a motion, please? Mr. Greco, seconded by Ms. Falco. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. C7 is the approval of awards of bids as attached. Can I have a motion, please? Mr. Abramson, seconded by Ms. Koshia. I heard you. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C8 is the acceptance of donation and appropriation of funds. Can I have a motion, please? Mr. Greco, seconded by Ms. Falco. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C9 is the acceptance of a donation. Can I have a motion, please? Ms. Abramson, seconded by Ms. Koshia. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C10 is the disposal of broken, surplus, and/or obsolete equipment, supplies, and books. Can I have a motion, please? Ms. Levitan, seconded by Ms. Falco. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Now we're moving on to audience to the public. Okay, I just wanted to remind everyone that the board has set the new procedures for the audience to the public, so please bear with me as I read through the procedures. The Syosset Board of Education Administration welcome attendance at the Board of Education meetings. The board business meetings will be live streamed and recorded. A link to access the live stream is available on the district website. The board values community input and provides opportunities to offer that input via email or in person. Persons who wish to speak during the audience to the public must register online to speak in advance of the meeting by 5 p.m. the day of the meeting. A link to the pre-registration form will be made available on the homepage on the district website 1 week before the meeting. Persons wishing to address the board in person during audience to the public must conform to the procedures adopted by the Board of Education. Speakers' remarks must conform to the following rules. 1. All speakers and observers are required to conduct themselves in a respectful and civil manner in accordance to the rules set by the board. 2. Speakers must address the board only, not members of the audience or the audience as a whole. 3. Speakers must limit their comments to issues concerning school district operations, school district affairs, or Board of Education policy. 4. Because of rights protected by state and federal law, no speaker may speak about an individual student or staff member, nor will the board entertain questions in public regarding collective bargaining negotiations, personnel matters, student matters, or legal matters. 5. No speaker may speak about decisions involving specific personnel or specific students. If a speaker wishes to address the board concerning specific personnel or specific students, the speaker may write to the board. 6. Speakers may not use epithets, slurs, personal abuse, lewd and obscene speech, profanity, libelous speech, threats, and fighting words or gestures, defined as or gestures which are their very utterance inflict injury or tend to incite a breach of the peace. Any person who violates the rules above will immediately forfeit the balance of their time addressing the board. To be recognized to speak, persons must register with their full name and address and attest that they will comply with the rules stated above. In addition, only residents of the Syosset School Central School District are permitted to address the board. Each resident will have 4 minutes to address the board, which may be extended or reduced. The board will not permit polling of board members by speakers. After every resident wishing to speak has had an opportunity to do so, the board and/or administration may respond to residents' questions or comments. No resident will be permitted to address the board more than once per meeting, and no one may record another member of the board in a manner that is disruptive or confrontational. And I just want to inform the audience that if these rules are not followed or if the audience heckles any speakers, I will first give a warning, and if there's a second breach of the rules, I will end the audience to a public portion of the meeting. And with that, the first speaker is going to be Mamiko Mishakno.
Good evening. Budget proposal maintains all programs while remaining below the tax cap. That is the headline of this budget bulletin published by our school district. But this is not true. We were told that 3 language programs in high school, Latin, Russian, and Japanese, will be discontinued. We knew this at least a week before April 16th board meeting, but the World Language Department failed to disclose this change in their 7-minute presentation and 25 discussion, as if it was not significant enough to mention. I have 2 children. One graduated last year and one in sophomore. They both took Japanese, and I know the program very well for 5 years. The reason I'm here today is because I want to save this successful program for the next generation. When I contacted our school and asked the reason for terminating the program, their answer was enrollment. If there were not enough people signing up, the class will be terminated. This, however, did not apply to Korean when only 4 people signed up to a class. Can the board please explain why the Korean was not terminated then? In fact, it is being expanded next year to be offered at the middle school level, making 7-year path instead of 4-year path. How does the school justify adding more classes when it had rather small enrollment in high school? I will raise 3 reasons why we should keep the Japanese language program. Number 1, Japanese language program is a highly successful elective program that is offered as an alternative to continuing the middle school language. An elective represents a choice for the students to explore new options. It gives teachers and students flexibility and accommodates students who have changed their mind. My children have noticed that their Japanese class kept growing with additional new students throughout the year and every year. On our high school website, World Language 9th Grader Transition Q&A, it asks, what are my options if I have not been successful in my middle school language? It answers, one option for students who struggle in world language is to take a level 1 course in ASL, Japanese, Latin, or Russian. Switching from French, Italian, or Spanish to a different language is usually not recommended and should be discussed with your guidance counselor or the world language coordinator. Our school recommends our students to keep taking the same language and does not recommend switching. In September, our high school will have 5 mainstream languages, and the only elective will be sign language. There will not be no other spoken language alternatives. If a student isn't doing well in one language out of one of the 5 tracks, the student might feel trapped and drop the language altogether because there is no alternatives. Number 2, Japanese program appeals to a variety of students who come from all sorts of backgrounds. When we attended my daughter's induction to the World Language National Honor Society, it was obvious that the Japanese language program had students from different nationalities and different heritage. It was so good to see that they are all there united with one purpose. I thought it was a true representation of diversity and unity in global citizenship. Number 3, Japanese language program would be a great alternative to students who have taken Asian language in a middle school. Asian languages are interrelated, just as European languages are interrelated. For example, the word mountain in Korean is san, which derived from Chinese shan. In Japanese, the word for mountain is yama, but when it writes to a named mountain, like Mount Fuji, we say Fujisan, and we write in the same character as Chinese shan. My point is, it is a likable switch from Asian language because it shares a background knowledge. Therefore, it would make sense for our school to keep Japanese language program even more as an elective language. Taking a language is also an attractive elective choice for students because many colleges prefer having students complete at least 3 to 4 years of foreign language in high school. I ask our school to please reconsider and give Japanese program another chance to seek out more students to enroll. I believe it's an excellent program with an experienced, talented teacher that lets it success.
Okay. The next speaker will be Maria Oliveri.
Good evening, members of the board of Syosset School of Education. My name is Maria Olivari. I've been a resident excuse me, in Syosset for 30 years, and I speak tonight as a parent of 2 alumni who have graduated from Syosset schools. They were started in kindergarten, went to Berry Hill, Southwoods, and then all of 12th, and graduated from 12th grade at Syosset High School. In 2014, my older daughter went on to study at NYU Shanghai, and in 2018, my younger daughter went on to study at the University of Chicago. The school district is an exceptional school district, as we know. It's a primary reason for many families to reside here, in addition to being a wonderful community. It's recently come to my attention that Japanese language courses will be phased out and Japanese 1 will not be offered in the fall. Although in my 30 years of living here, I have never addressed the board before, and I used to live next door to the former Board of Education, Janet Cox. But tonight, I feel compelled to do so, to address the board, and I respectfully request that the board reverse their decisioning, or any decisioning that was made, or any influence with them, to reconsider and to continue to offer the Japanese language courses. Both of my daughters took Japanese 1, 2, and 3 in their high school years, and they took it as an elective. They also studied Italian at the time, and my older daughter also studied Russian. I do recall that when my daughters were here, the Japanese language courses, which were very appealing to me, were unique because Syosset at the time, and I don't know if this is still a true fact or not, but it was one of 2 high schools in New York State that actually offered study of Japanese. The study of the Japanese language classes were very unique, but they were also very beneficial to my children and other students. They positively impacted their higher education. My daughters both enjoyed Japanese immensely, Japanese Language Club, and also found it in their higher education and their travels. So much so that my older daughter, after studying in China, she then went on now and is studying in Japan and is obtaining a graduate degree and is still studying the language and increasing her proficiency. She's also now fluent in Mandarin as well. I think it's important that we continue to offer this. I believe that there is a necessity to allow the children to have the ability to take a year of a language or 3 years of a language. It's very important, and I think that we need to think outside the box. And I think that discontinuing Japanese would be a big disservice to other students. I can tell you that when my children were taking Japanese, they took it as an elective, and they chose not to take lunch because they wanted to take Japanese. And it really inured to their benefit. I believe that it would be detrimental to Syosset schools to eliminate the Japanese language studies. I think it's been very unique. I think it played a strong role in the development of my children, as well as potentially maybe even the acceptance into their schools that they went to. I also believe that if we don't have it, it would do a great disservice to other students within the district, and I believe that, I respectfully request that the board reconsider any decisioning that was made to stop teaching Japanese in Syosset. Thank you.
The next speaker will be Dr. Christopher Misciano.
Good evening. I'm here also to request that the board's assistance in reinstating the Japanese program at Syosset High School. And please understand, I'm very happy with the direction of the language program, making a solid track, 5 languages with the addition of Chinese and Korean, from middle school straight through high school graduation. However, we should not eliminate all electives in a high school at the same time. Wouldn't it be better to run 5 language programs along with the electives, to truly have a robust and diverse program? Why eliminate the electives? Isn't the purpose of the program to teach students to learn from other cultures and languages, and not just 5 languages? And in the new elementary school program, they're exposed to many world languages and cultures. And then we're going to turn around and say, I'm sorry, you can only have 5 of them, and you're stuck with that for the next 7 years. That is not teaching diversity. And we spoke with the language director, who said that the problem is enrollment. But the Japanese program has consistent enrollment numbers every year. There's no decrease in enrollment. And the other electives, like Latin, have strong enrollment as well. Also, you cannot compare an elective to a mainstream class. Electives have a smaller enrollment because they are electives. You cannot compare elective enrollment to mainstream courses such as Spanish that's been in the school system for many years. We also, so we wanted to see if anyone else thought the way we did and had interest in saving the program, so we created a Syosset community petition asking the support to bring back the Japanese program. The board was also emailed a copy of this petition last week. And in only 3 weeks, we got 695 signatures. It's pretty clear our community wants the Japanese program to continue and rally with high numbers in just 3 weeks. There are several testimonies from graduates from our Japanese program that have gone onward to even study in Japanese universities and successfully live there. This program changed their world in a positive way. It helped my older daughter, who graduated last year from Syosset, from the Japanese program. She was elected into the Foreign Language Honor Society, and she was also able to pass the Japanese language proficiency test at her college to get college credit when she entered the university. And the Japanese program is unique from other classes due to the dedication of its teacher. Every year, she takes her students on a field trip to be immersed in the Japanese culture. She also supports a highly successful Japanese club with students from all different backgrounds that study Japanese culture and language all together. The Japanese program also has unique successes. 11 students from the program have won the Canon Japan essay contest at Stony Brook University. And over 20 students have been awarded scholarships for a Japanese student exchange program that allows them to study for 6 weeks abroad in Japan in the summer. This is an incredible experience for our Syosset students and is only found in the Japanese program. The Japanese program also has students that have achieved the seal of biliteracy as well. This is not exclusive to the mainstream languages. The same goal has been achieved in the Japanese elective. And finally, the cost. The Japanese program has a 0 additional cost. The teacher is tenured, so having her continue to teach has no additional costs. And at the last meeting, we were specifically told that our most valuable assets were our language teachers, so why are we eliminating them? And with the budget increased by $11 million, why is a 0-cost program being cut? In conclusion, the community wants it, our students want it, and there's no additional costs. Eliminating such a unique program is a mistake, and you're limiting our children when they want to learn, explore different options, and expand beyond the limits. I respectfully request that you reinstate the Japanese program for this fall. Thank you.
The next speaker will be Syed Rizvi. Going once. Syed Rizvi. All right, okay. The next one will be Deborah Saglia. Okay, no Deborah Saglia. All right, next one will be Brian Tevet.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to respond to some remarks made at the end of the last board meeting by the school attorney. I believe these remarks are deeply concerning and that the attorney, Christopher Powers, gave the board some very poor advice. First, about the nature of the audience to the public portion of the meeting. Mr. Powers said that a Board of Education meeting is a, quote, limited forum, unquote. The correct term is limited public forum. Mr. Powers omitted the word public, and even if this was accidental, it should not go unnoticed as the word public has very important legal repercussions. Second, Mr. Powers said that the board can limit topics. The fact is, once a school board has decided to open a public comment period, members of the public are allowed by the First Amendment to speak about any topic that is within the scope of the board's authority. This includes the curriculum, this includes the disciplinary process, and the manner in which the superintendent, who is hired by the board, carries out student suspensions. This also includes the district's overall educational goals and the communications which the district sends out to the community. Third, Mr. Powers said that the board can lay out a path for speakers and limit speakers if they stray from that path. This kind of language is getting very close to content regulation, or even worse, viewpoint regulation. I want to remind the board that content regulation in a limited public forum is only allowed for narrowly drawn purposes, and viewpoint regulation is not permitted at all. The purpose of the public comment period is to enable the board to listen to all voices of the community. It's an important part of the democratic process. It's not an echo chamber where the board's viewpoints are reflected back to it. Specifically, terms like fighting words and incitement to a breach of peace have consistently been interpreted by the courts very narrowly. They apply on only very extreme circumstances, and spoken words which merely prompt heckling or jeering from members of the audience do not even come close to meeting the standard of this definition. Now, I would like to emphasize that I recognize the need for the board to run an orderly meeting. The rule which states that the audience to the public portion of the meeting will be canceled if, after a single warning, anyone in the audience heckles a speaker, and that rule was stated this evening. This rule is not conducive to that purpose of holding an orderly meeting. Quite the contrary. It amounts to what is called a heckler's veto, since it allows any member of the audience to silence any speaker they disagree with just by making a lot of noise 2 times. This rule, therefore, rewards and encourages uncivil and disruptive behavior. Instead, if any person or group of people in the audience heckles or jeers a speaker so loudly that it disrupts the meeting, then that person or group of people who are doing the heckling should be expelled, not the speaker. This kind of disruptive behavior from some members of the audience prevents the board from listening to all of the voices of the community and should not be tolerated. In summary, the new rules and practices for the audience to the public are unworkable. They impinge on First Amendment rights, therefore exposing the district to the risk of litigation, and encourage disruptive behavior by creating an incentive for a heckler's veto. I urge the board to seek an alternative legal opinion and amend these rules immediately. Thank you.
Okay, this concludes the audience to the public portion of the meeting. Okay, Mr. Powers.
Thank you, Madam President. Sir, in terms of whether this is a limited forum or a limited public forum, you are correct. It is a limited public forum, and the appropriate rules that are applicable are as follows. There was no heckling that took place last month. Heckling had absolutely no part of the decision that was made, but rather this Board of Education and the President stepped in because she had the authority to do so under Policy 2400. Policy 2400 states in its general overview section, the board recognizes its responsibility to conduct the business of the school district in an orderly and efficient manner and will, not should or may, it will therefore require reasonable controls to regulate public presentations at the Board of Education meetings. So what were those reasonable controls that were put into place? They are the same controls that are in place for this evening, including bullet point number 3. Speakers must limit their comments to issues concerning school district operations, school district affairs, and Board of Education policy. What happened last month is that there were certain comments that were made, and the board president correctly ruled that they were inappropriate comments, and as a result, the speaker was not permitted to continue speaking. This is a meeting of the Board of Education of the Syosset School District, a very fine school district, 7,000 students. These kids come to school 180 days out of the year. This is not a board that is required or charged with the responsibility of making geopolitical decisions. When someone steps up to the podium, makes reference to genocidal Zionistic regimes, that tends to, the exact words, that tends to incite a breach of peace, and that's why the board president acted. In addition, such comments, genocidal Zionistic regimes, is beyond the scope of a school board meeting consideration. That was not before this Board of Education. They are a Board of Education. This is not the United Nations. The board appropriately deemed it to be inappropriate for that conversation to continue. Limited public forum means we can discuss things that are before the Board of Education. It's not a matter of you come here and state whatever is on your mind. The 6 speakers that spoke, 5 were actually in conformity to the regulations that were placed on the record very clearly by the board president. 1 did not, and that resulted in that board member not being able to continue with his comments, sir. And that is our position. Thank you.
Powers. Thank you so much. And the board, as I described before, put in these new procedures at the end of the year, trying to have a more orderly meeting so we can conduct our business. As you know, we are Board of Education, and there are school business affairs that we need to complete at the public meeting, and these procedures are put in place so that we can have an orderly meeting, have a civil meeting, and then we can move on with our agendas. And then at the end of the day, it's going to be our kids who will be affected if the board cannot do its business in public in an orderly manner. So, okay, and Dr. Rogers, do you want to comment?
Sure. So one of the things that I love about this community is its passion for education. And that certainly was on display this evening. And I have been, over my 10 years here, this board has heard me over and over again praise the quality of our world language program, its breadth, its scope, its depth, and the number of opportunities that are available to students. So I'm charged with 2 responsibilities by the board. The first responsibility is to build a tremendous educational program. The second is to be a good steward of the public's resources. Sometimes those 2 challenges are in conflict. Nothing would make me happier than to see enrollments grow. I don't think that the perception that the enrollments are strong in 3 of the world language electives is accurate. I'll ask Dr. Curry, who is responsible for making the staffing arrangements in the district every year, talk a little bit about some of the enrollment numbers that factored into our decision making. But we had a couple of principles that guided us. There are lots of classes at the high school that remain in the course catalog, but there are some times when there's not enough interest to run them. So these courses fall into that category in my mind. What does that mean? If next year there are a group of 9th graders and some 10th graders who still want to take Russian 1, Latin 1, Japanese 1, and the number of kids meets the threshold for the number of students that we need to run a section, we'll gladly run a section and start a new section. The second principle is for any student that's in any of those three programs right now, we will not send them without a second and third year program. So we will have Japanese 2, Japanese 3 available students through to the end of their sequence because we've made a commitment to them to make sure that they have what they need. And so if a year from now a new Japanese 1 section or a Russian 1 or Latin 1 section runs, we will commit to those students to stay with them through the course of their program. So the program has not ended, but as we do with other classes at the high school, if the enrollment doesn't justify running a section this year or this semester, we don't run the section. That's the situation that these three language programs are in. I think the points that were made are all excellent. The points about having alternatives for students to explore if they're struggling in one language, the importance of being able to choose from a breadth of languages that align to students' interests and preferences and future career aspirations. I think all of those points are well made and well taken. It's wonderful to see community support for the program. What I would hope is that that community support translates into students who elect to take the class, because if we have enough students who elect to take the class, then we'd be happy to run the class. So I do want to have Dr. Curry go through some of the enrollment figures that we've been dealing with and where we have seen student interest go over the course of the last several years and why we find ourselves at this place right now.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Yes, in looking at the courses mentioned, particularly the Japanese class, we are running Japanese 2, 3, and 4 next year, to the point Dr. Rogers mentioned about when students are currently in progress and pursuit of the language, perhaps for graduation credentials, we don't want to prevent them from completing their course of study. But when we take a look at staffing, we not only look at the enrollment that is currently in front of us for the upcoming year, but we take a very deep look at the enrollment trends. And what we have noticed over the past 6 years, with Japanese in particular, is the initial population of students as compared to the overall whole that were interested was very small, but nonetheless it was enough to sustain running a single class of Japanese 1. However, over the last 6 years, that number has declined to a point where this year it fell below the threshold of double-digit numbers for us to be able to justify running a Japanese 1 class and starting a new cohort of students through the program. So that's the challenge that we were faced with this year in making some of these difficult decisions. But the point that Dr. Rogers brings up is that each year is a new year, and students and working with their guidance counselors and the courses that they're signing up for are telling us what courses they are asking for. And based on the numbers that come our way, we are then able to schedule and staff accordingly. There was mention about numbers, in particular with Korean, but the data that I have does not reflect the numbers that were quoted. In fact, the enrollment with Korean is on a steady upswing, and the enrollment numbers are quite high for that. Latin, the same thing. We're seeing very small single-digit numbers in Latin 1, and therefore unable to begin a new cohort of students on a course of study. However, we will see the students that are already in the program through that, through their studies. One of the challenges we have been debating is that in our efforts to offer students as many opportunities as possible, what is happening is it is spreading the pool of students rather thin in order to balance the fiscal responsibility with running a course and the costs that are associated with that, as well as sustaining it with a sizable enrollment. Because what happens after year 1, year 2, the numbers decline, and they continue to decline as we have seen in our data across all 4 years of study, and that's the case in all languages. So in order to do our very best in providing for the students within our fiscal responsibilities, these decisions are made. But that is not to say that if students weren't to come back, and I'm very encouraged to hear about the numbers of individuals that completed the survey that you put out, because 650 individuals interested in Japanese, we welcome these students to indicate that that's what they want to take, because we'll do everything then in our power to make that happen.
I'll just conclude by saying we haven't made a decision to terminate a program. We're just watching enrollment closely. And if the enrollment changes, we're still in the process of working on staffing. So if there was to be a surge of enrollment, obviously we would take that into account and we would staff accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Meeting adjourned.